Hey everyone, and welcome to RUBIN'S Mind Lab, where we break down the latest research into what it really means. Have you ever been stuck in a conversation with someone and wondered to yourself, does this person actually know what they are talking about? We all make snap judgments about people's intelligence and skills every single day. Whether we are deciding who to ask for help on a project, who to listen to for advice, or even who to hire for a job. But have you ever stopped to think about how exactly your brain processes that information? Are you just guessing, or is there a hidden calculation going on in your head that you are not even aware of? A fascinating new study suggests your brain is actually acting like a tiny mathematician, running advanced statistics to figure out who knows what. Scientists wanted to move away from those boring lab experiments where people rate cartoon characters or judge video game avatars. They wanted to see how we judge regular, real-world knowledge. So they used trivia games as their testing ground, and from that tiny snippet of information, they had to predict how well that person would do on a whole bunch of other questions. It sounds simple, but think about the complexity. You see someone get one question right about American history. What does that actually tell you? Are they a history buff, or did they just guess lucky? Are they generally smart or just good at this one niche topic? The researchers found that we are surprisingly good at this. We don't just judge people on their raw scores, we actually factor in how hard we think the questions are, and we adjust our expectations based on that. Which means we have a really impressive build in sense of how common or obscure certain facts are. Even when people were just guessing, they were often remarkably close to reality. The researchers tested if our brains were just using shortcuts, or if they were following a more formal, rational process known as Bayesian inference. Think of Bayesian inference like a fancy update to your internal database. You start with a general assumption or a prior about how smart the average person is. When you get a new piece of information, like seeing someone nail a really tough question, you don't just dump your old beliefs, you mathematically combine your past experience with this new evidence to update your opinion. It is constantly recalculating the probability of someone's competence based on the quality of their performance. The study showed that computers using this exact kind of Bayesian logic matched how the human participants thought almost perfectly. And that is a massive deal because it means our social intuition is much more data-driven than we usually give ourselves credit for. But then the researchers took it a step further. They didn't just want to see how we judge people we already know about. They wanted to know how we search for information. If you really needed to figure out someone's expertise, what would you ask them? And they do it in a way that is actually quite clever. If you ask someone a question that is way too easy and they get it right, you haven't learned anything new because everyone gets easy questions, right? If you ask a question that is literally impossible and they get it wrong, you still haven't learned anything new because nobody knows the answer. To find out if someone is truly competent, your brain wants to pick a question right at the edge of their ability. You want that Goldilocks zone, where the answer has a good chance of being either right or wrong depending on how much they actually know. The coolest part about this finding is that it shows we don't just passively soak up information. We are active investigators. We scan our environment and select the questions that will give us the most bang for our buck in terms of learning about somebody else. Even if in the real world we sometimes get a little bit lazy and rely on rough rules of thumb rather than perfect robot-like cold calculations. So, what does this actually mean for your daily life? It means that your snap judgments are not just biased hunches. They are actually the result of a sophisticated, well-oiled social machine that has been developed to help navigate the human world. Your brain is a naturally gifted statistician. However, this study also shows us the limits of that machine. We tend to do a lot better when we have some context, like knowing that a question is objectively difficult. When we don't have that context or when we are stressed and rushing, those internal calculators might trip up and rely on simpler, less accurate shortcuts. Future research could look into how this changes when we evaluate people from different backgrounds or cultures, because that is where our internal assumptions might get a bit messy. It is one thing to judge someone's knowledge of the asteroid belt, but it is another beast entirely to judge their trustworthiness or their character. Science is all about narrowing down the truth, one question at a time. It turns out that is exactly what your brain is doing every single day behind the scenes. Whether you know it or not, you are always running the numbers. If you found this dive into the psychology of how we size people up interesting, please smash that like button so the algorithm knows you want more of this content. Leave a comment below with a time you realized your first impression of someone was totally wrong because of a, let's call it, bad data point. And don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell to join us here at the Mind Lab for our next adventure into the human psyche. Thanks for watching and stay curious.